Hello, I'm Claire Smith and welcome to my channel. So today I've got 10 different fragrance samples to talk about, and these are all hyped fragrances that I've seen on YouTube. They're either new ones or older ones that are just talked about a lot, and I just thought I'd tell you my thoughts on these and just really tell you basically whether they're worth the hype or whether they're not worth the hype. So if you haven't seen me before, I'm Claire Smith. I make videos all about perfume, perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology even, and I also just do some straight perfume reviews and also fun perfume tags. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing, and also please like this video if you do like this kind of content. So what's the first sample? So the first fragrance is one that I was sent by Lizzie at Rose & Jones. I'm going to link everybody's channel down below in case you do want to check them out. But this first fragrance is by Carine Roitfeld, and it's Forgive Me. So this fragrance I was so intrigued by because it's been formulated by Dominique Ropignon, and he's formulated some of my most favourite designer fragrances such as Alien by Thierry Mugler and also Kenzo's Jungle L'Elephant. So this one I was just really interested to try, and it really didn't disappoint. So this opens with a very vintage feel to me. It really takes me back to maybe the 40s or perhaps the 50s, and I think that's really a very green smelling kind of leather fragrance that's in the opening, but also because of the really strong, almost menthol style white florals here. And the menthol style white floral here is tuberose, but really it makes me think of the menthol style Jasmin that's in the opening of Alien and also in the opening of Alien Essence Absolue. If you've tried either of those two fragrances, you will know what I mean by that. So this has that, but it also has some frankincense, and I think that really amps up that feeling of the white florals in the opening. I think the opening is just stunning, and the opening actually goes on for quite a long time. It's pretty much like that for about the first hour, and then it begins to calm down. But that first hour just gives me visions of someone dressed in really silky, really luxurious underwear and wearing that but with just a leather coat over the top and going to their lover's house and derobing on the front step and then romping upstairs. It is an incredibly sexy fragrance, this. So as this dries down, really the white florals calm down a lot. They become silkier, they become smoother, they become a lot fresher actually. And actually the leatheriness really dissipates. It becomes less green. It becomes just in the background. I think this fragrance is just stunning. The first time I wore this, I wore it quite late at night and I went to bed and I sort of hadn't really, properly smelt it. I hadn't really noticed it. And I just spent all my time as I was going to sleep just smelling my arm and just not being able to stop smelling my arm. I think it probably just delayed my sleep because I was just so taken with this fragrance. I've worn this a few times now and it's actually quite long lasting, but I would say after the first hour and a half, 2 hours, it really does become quite close to skin, which you would kind of expect. I think this fragrance is something that, could be your signature, but I think it's more of a going out fragrance. It's more of a big event kind of fragrance. It's very much a very distinctive fragrance, something that people would really remember you by. And I would really love to have this one in my collection. So that's Carine Roitfeld's Forgive Me. So the second fragrance is also one that I was sent by Lizzie at Rose & Jones, and this one is by Giardini di Toscana and it's Bianco Latte. So you didn't even need me to tell you the fragrance name, I don't think. You probably knew it before I even said it because it's just been all over YouTube. People have been talking about Bianco Latte, and I'm not really a gourmand fragrance kind of person. I'm normally not that interested by things that are straight up food. But even I was a little bit intrigued by this one because I just heard so many people raving about it and saying how amazing it is. So I was really pleased to try this. So this opens in a very realistic caramel fragrance. Normally I'm not very keen on caramel in fragrances because it can smell kind of artificial, it can smell quite harsh, it can smell really nothing like caramel smells in real life. But this one's pretty good on the caramel at the beginning. After about a few minutes, it seems to really amp up on the coumarin. The coumarin here kind of gives it a little bit of a spiciness almost. It's definitely a vanilla spiced fragrance, but with a very sweet caramel. It's something that makes me think of a biscuit baking in an oven, a golden biscuit. It makes me think of that kind of caramelized golden brown colour as well. But it also has some texture. Definitely something that makes me think of that biscuit again. It's got like almost grainy texture to it. It's not really smooth, I guess, this fragrance. For a fragrance called Bianco Latte, I was expecting something milky, something that was almost like a white chocolate smell. I don't really get that from this fragrance. I think if you're one of those people who, if you go to a restaurant, you always order caramel desserts, this is probably a good fragrance for you. I'm just not one of those people. I always choose lemon or I choose some kind of fruit. I'm just not a super sweet kind of person. And I think this fragrance just isn't me. But I can see why people would like it because it's reasonably linear. It's something that just has that sweetness all the way through. It's very easygoing. It's just not exciting me, this one. And I think really if you've got things like Vanilla 28 in your collection, this is very similar. This actually makes me think of like Montale or Mancera vanillas actually. It's got that kind of texture to it that those fragrances have. And I just don't really feel like I need this. But I do also see why this has been successful in its price point as well, because it's quite a low price point. It's about £110 for 100ml, this one. So, you know, relative to other niche fragrances, this isn't that expensive. So, yeah, I mean, it's worth trying if you like gourmand fragrances, but it's just not for me. So that's Bianco Latte by Giardini di Toscana. So the next fragrance I got from a subscriber in Belgium. So this is from Francoise. And this fragrance is called Ylang in Gold and it's by Micallef. Thank you so much, Francoise, for sharing some of your collection with me. That's really so nice of you to send me these fragrances. So this one I have been intrigued to try for so long because I've seen loads of people talk about it on YouTube ever since I began doing YouTube. And I was always intrigued by this one as well because of the bottle. The bottle is absolutely stunning. It just looks really elegant and really fun. And I just thought I would really like this fragrance because it's a Ylang Ylang. So this fragrance is not that old school Ylang Ylang. It's more of the newer kind of Ylang Ylang. It's more of that kind of banana-y Ylang Ylang, the fun, fruity Ylang Ylang. So this opens very, very sweet. I was quite taken aback by just how sweet this was. It's really more fruity than it is floral in a way in the opening. So it opens with peachiness and also that banana-y Ylang Ylang, but also a touch of coconut. As this dries down, the Ylang Ylang becomes slightly more waxy and also the coconut amps up slightly, but really this isn't an overtly coconutty fragrance. The thing that really takes over is a fruity feeling vanilla. And the vanilla here smells almost like a creamy vanilla, a cream pie kind of vanilla, but with loads and loads of fruits. And really it stays like that throughout the rest of the fragrance. It's quite strong, it's quite long lasting, but it doesn't really change that much after that. I think this one is just in that genre of happy yellow floral fragrances, but it definitely has a lot more sweetness. It's a lot more fruity than generally in that genre. I think this fragrance just occupies a niche that I don't really need more fragrances of. I have quite a lot of yellow floral fragrances, so I think I'm good with that. And also I was put off by how sweet this fragrance was. But I think it's a really nice one if you're looking for a really fruity Ylang Ylang or really sweet Ylang Ylang. Also with this fragrance, I've seen it compared with another fragrance that's very much cheaper than this one. And that fragrance is Chopard's Casmir. And I have never tried that fragrance, so I can't compare them. But if you have tried that fragrance and you've tried this fragrance, how do they compare? Are they actually that similar? Because if you look at the notes, they don't seem to be that similar. So yeah, I'm just interested. Please let me know down below. So that's Micallef's Ylang in Gold. So the next fragrance is one that I was also sent by Francoise, and this fragrance is from Jovoy and it's called Remember Me. So the idea behind this fragrance is that it's supposed to be something that is so distinctive that people will know you by this fragrance, and that's hence the name. And I agree, it is very distinctive. So when I first sprayed this, I don't really know much about it despite seeing it all over YouTube. It's something that I don't know, I just haven't really sort of clicked. I haven't really sort of taken on board how this should smell from all the reviews of it that I've watched. But it was just instant recognition as a chai spice latte. That's how it smells in the opening. It's very cardamom based, it's very warm, it's kind of milky, and it's got that kind of Guerlain style vanilla almost, but it's gone in a slightly different direction. It's sort of towards a Shalimar style vanilla, but it's not quite the same. This fragrance was formulated by Cécile Zarokian, and I think she's really famous for that style of vanilla, really. And I think vanilla is really her signature note, isn't it? So I'm not surprised that this is a very good vanilla. But I think, you know, this is quite distinctive and it's quite interesting in a way. I've never really smelt that chai spiced latte in fragrance before. So as this dries, it becomes less milky, less creamy, and it goes kind of more floral and woodier in a way, but it still is quite distinctively that kind of chai spices. The cardamom is there throughout the fragrance. I think this fragrance is the type of gourmands that I really gravitate towards. It's got sort of some kind of interesting points. It's a little bit spicy, and it would be really nice as a really cozy autumnal fragrance, I think. I think you just end up smelling delicious in this one. It's so distinctive, and I really agree with the name. And again, it's one that I would be very happy to own. I'm not quite sure how often I would wear this one, but I think it's probably one that would fit better with my personality than perhaps something like Forgive Me. So again, this one was really long lasting, but it was more of a skin scent after about half an hour in. It wasn't really a big loud one after then. But yeah, I like this one, and I'd be very happy to own a bottle. So that's Jovoy's Remember Me. So the next fragrance that Francoise sent me was called Punk Motel, and this is by Corretano. So this is an Italian brand. I think they're a Rome-based perfumery. I've never tried anything from this brand before. And Punk Motel, it gives you sort of, an idea of how this is going to smell, isn't it? You think it's going to be something really punchy, something really loud, probably something quite jarring. No. You could not be more wrong with this fragrance. This is a really soft, really gentle kind of skin scent, a kind of musky fragrance, something that isn't loud in the slightest. So this to me opens with a powdered sugar and a very light, very ethereal feeling rose. It's not really a strong rose, it's not a sweet rose. It's more of quite a neutral rose, I would say. It's not a red rose, it's not pink even. It's much lighter than that. After that opening, it's a really difficult fragrance for me to describe because there's not really much to latch on to here. It's musky, it's ethereal, it's airy, it's sweet, it's almost vanilla-y, but not quite. It's also woody and a little bit sparkly, and actually in the far dry down, I think of that kind of coating on sugared almonds, that kind of crispy outer shell of the sugared almonds. So this fragrance has salicylates in it. Salicylates are really used to suggest a solar feel, so something relating to the sun, much like aldehydes can be used to sort of suggest sunniness in fragrances. I think this one for me, it is a little bit sunny, but I wouldn't say that it's overtly solar. I think it's just warm and bright feeling, really. I think this fragrance is just one that I need to live with a bit more and understand a bit more, wear a bit more to be able to know much more about it. I'm not sure that this fragrance is for me. It's not jumping out at me as something that I love, but I wouldn't say it's something I dislike either. It's kind of a bit of a, kind of feeling to this one. I think if you like fragrances like Glossier You, if you like those kinds of skin scents, those kind of your skin but better kind of fragrances, this one could be one to check out. But as for me, I think I'm all right with those kinds of fragrances in my collection. So that's Corretano's Punk Motel. So the next fragrance is one from Lizzie at Rose & Jones again, and this one is from Maison Lancome, and it's Jasmin d'Eau. So Lizzie sent me this one because she said that it was like Jasmin des Anges from Dior, which is a fragrance that I own and love, but it was less fruity. And I totally agree with her. It is very, very similar, along similar lines to that Dior. I think this one for me is like a little bit citrusy in the opening. The jasmine here is slightly greener, it's slightly stronger than Jasmin des Anges, and also there's quite a musky element to this fragrance as well. But also this fragrance, to me, smells like it has Lily of the Valley. It's a little bit soapy at points. I don't think it's listed, but I do smell it. I also think this one has longevity issues, and I think that's maybe why people haven't talked about this one very much from the Maison Lancome line. I've not seen many reviews of this. I can't really remember anybody talking about this for a few years now, and I don't know whether that's because Maison Lancome, that are they being discontinued? Are they continuing? It's all very confusing, isn't it, with that line? But I think that's maybe why people aren't talking about that line as well, because nobody's really sure what's going on with it. But this one is incredibly pretty, and I was really pleased to try it. But just that longevity issue just puts me off it a little bit. And also, I feel like I've got enough jasmine in my fragrance collection at the moment. I'm quite happy with Jasmin des Anges, but it was lovely to try it. So that's Jasmin d'Eau. So the next fragrance is one that I was sent by M. So M, I remember trying multiple samples of Penhaligon Solaris to make sure that she absolutely loved it before she got a bottle. And she did get a bottle. So Penhaligon Solaris is something that has really surprised me because I did a testing video, I think about a year ago, maybe a little bit more, on 5 Penhaligon's fragrances. And I can't say that any of those really blew me away to the point where I was thinking about actually buying one. This one though, I just think it's really striking, and it's, you know, it's something I have a lot of. It's a yellow and white floral fragrance, but it has such a freshness to it, and it just is just really bright and really uplifting. I think if you're looking for a yellow and white floral fragrance that doesn't feel cloying, that isn't based around musk so much, then this is a really nice fragrance to try. So the thing that really cuts through the yellow and white florals is the citrus, but also the blackcurrant leaf. I love blackcurrant in fragrances. It really cuts through and freshens up the fragrance and makes it really distinctive, and it gives it kind of a greenness to it as well as this dries down. I think really in the dry down it doesn't change that much. You've still got the citrus, you've still got the blackcurrant leaf, you've still got the yellow and white florals, but the florals become almost creamy, almost a little bit more velvety in the dry down. I think this one's absolutely perfect for spring summer because it just does have that freshness to it, even though it does have those kind of solar feeling florals as well. And yeah, I would really recommend going to try this one. It doesn't sound all that interesting when I describe it, but it's just really pretty, really well done, and it really lasts very well. So that's Penhaligon Solaris. So the next fragrance is one that I've been sent by another subscriber, and this one is from Fiona. So Fiona comes from where I'm from, so down south in the east of England, in Cambridgeshire, Norfolk, around that area. So, you know, we've got that in common, and we have been chatting a bit, and she sent me a few samples, I sent her a few samples, and it's just really nice, isn't it, YouTube, in that way. You can just meet people and do that kind of thing. So this one is called Ingenious Ginger, and it's by Goldfield and Banks. So Goldfield and Banks are a brand that I've tried a few from in store, but I've not really gelled with any of them really. I think the one that stood out to me the most from Goldfield and Banks' line was Bohemian Lime. And I'd not tried this one, so I was intrigued to try it. So this starts out with a really creamy, bright ginger that's zingy but isn't sharp. It's really, really nice, the opening. As this dries down, it becomes sweeter and muskier, and there's a growth of some ambroxan and also some woody patchouli in the background of the fragrance. By the dry down, this is quite a synthetic woods kind of base fragrance, also quite based around ambroxan, with a dry ginger biscuit feel in the background. And honestly, as this dries down further, it goes a little bit aquatic. I really wasn't expecting that. And if this fragrance had cologne listed in the notes, I honestly wouldn't blink. I really get something that makes me feel a bit nauseous from this fragrance. And I'm guessing it's cologne because it does have that kind of aquatic, almost marine feel in the dry down. This was really long lasting, quite punchy, but it just sadly wasn't for me. I'm just not someone who can cope with cologne in fragrances. It just makes me feel sick, and that's not something I can help. But I think if you don't mind cologne in fragrances, if you're not sensitive to ambroxan, and if you really like ginger, this is going to be the perfect fragrance for you. So that's Ingenious Ginger by Goldfield and Banks. So the next fragrance is also from Fiona, and this one's Montale Soleil de Capri. So I was really intrigued to try some more Montale fragrances after my 5 brands I love and 5 brands I don't understand video, because Montale were in there in the ones that I don't understand. And I just said in that video, I don't feel like I've tried that many Montales and I want to try a few more. So I thought this was a good opportunity to try another one. So this is a citrus-based fragrance, and really this is a very much a sunglasses on fragrance when you first spray it. It's grapefruit, it's lemon, and it stays with those citrus notes throughout the fragrance, but it does sort of quieten down a little bit towards the end. So it becomes slightly more aromatic, it becomes a little bit woodier, and it also becomes a little bit muskier. And really, it's not heavy on that sort of signature Montale musk, actually. It's something that's relatively citrusy most of the way through the fragrance, and really those are the dominant notes. I think this fragrance has been compared to things like Light Blue and also to I Love Love by Moschino. I wouldn't say that I would compare it with those fragrances because I think this one's nicer than those fragrances, and I think it's more distinctive because of the grapefruit. The grapefruit really makes this a very different fragrance to those fragrances, which are based around lemon and orange respectively. I also think light blue has a lot of apple in it, and I think that really makes this fragrance very different to light blue. I know there's quite a big price differential and maybe lots of people don't like grapefruit, but I think this one's infinitely nicer than those other two fragrances. This isn't a complicated fragrance, but I do think it would be nice and refreshing for the summer if you're looking for a citrus musk. So that's Montale's Soleil de Capri. So the final fragrance is also one from Lizzie at Rose & Jones, and this fragrance is called Alice, and it's from the Alice in Wonderland range of Redolescent, who are a British indie brand, small perfumer brand. And I think they've had quite a hit with this range. So I've seen lots of people talking about QH from this range. And then I think there's also another fragrance called Hatter from this range. So I've only tried this one. I can't tell you about the others. But I think this fragrance is not how I imagined an Alice in Wonderland fragrance to smell. I imagined Alice to smell quite innocent to begin with. And then to go darker as she goes into Wonderland and realises it's not quite all she seemed. That's not how this fragrance is at all, really. It really starts off with a really dark, leathery feeling oak moss, but there's also some bright aldehydes in here. So the aldehydes are more of the solar type of aldehyde rather than the soapy type of aldehyde, which actually really surprised me because oak moss in itself can be quite soapy, but really this fragrance is just very, very dark. I think there are also some florals here. I don't have the notes for this fragrance, but I would guess a touch of Ylang Ylang, maybe also some tuberose. I think the tuberose is probably the dead cert here, and also some Artemisia. I think it's a little bit green smelling to me. It's a little bit herbal and medicinal. This one just isn't for me. It just isn't for me. It lightens up a little bit in the dry down, but it still is too dark for me. I think this fragrance is also too similar to something else that I own, which is Bandit by Replica. I find that fragrance incredibly difficult to tolerate. I won it in a competition. I didn't choose it. And I didn't really know anything about it. And it's just too leathery, it's too dark, it's too vintage. There's too much soapiness in that fragrance. And this one is really quite similar, but it doesn't have that rubberiness that Bandit has. Bandit can sometimes smell a bit like an exhaust. This one doesn't smell like an exhaust. So yeah, this one's not for me, but clearly it is distinctive. Clearly it has been successful. Clearly people love it. So yeah, just not personally for me, but not a bad fragrance at all. So that's Alice by Redolescent. So that's the final fragrance in this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, then please press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please let me know, what have you smelled that made you to go wow recently? And have you tried any of the fragrances in this video, and what do you think of them? So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.